So this grandma has a big problem. Now the woman's name is Kay, and Kay's around 50 when all this starts, and she's living in Missouri. And like I said, Kay has a big problem. She's in a lot of debt. Apparently she breeds dogs on her farm, and her dog breeding business just isn't bringing in enough money. And on top of that, it seems like she really doesn't like her husband. Her husband is this guy, Griesbauer. And so one day in 2004, Griesbauer gets deployed with the National Guard to Iraq, and he's supposed to be gone a whole year. And this gives Kay an idea. See, Iraq is a dangerous place for a soldier like Griesbauer during this time. And if he were to die there, then maybe she could make some money. So she goes and she takes a bunch of life insurance policies out on him. $1.1 million worth of life insurance policies. And then she waits. She waits to see if anything happens to him while he's gone to Iraq. And a year goes by. And Griesbauer comes back from his deployment and he's fine. So Kay doesn't get any money and she's still in debt. And by 2006, that debt keeps getting worse and worse. And now she's worried she might lose the farm that's been in her family for years. And that is when she comes up with a new plan. Instead of waiting and hoping for Griesbauer to die in a far-off place like Iraq, she could see to it that he dies here at home. That way, she can collect that $1.1 million in life insurance money. So she gets to work on this plan. Now, Kay's not going to murder her husband herself. Now, that would be too obvious and it would look suspicious. Instead, she's going to get someone else to do it. And that is when Kay calls up her friend, this woman, Mock. So Kay calls up Mock and she starts lying to her and telling her that Griesbauer is abusive and that she's scared of him, which there's no evidence to suggest that any of that is true. Regardless, she asks Mock if she could help get Griesbauer killed. And I guess Mock is like, sure, I'll help. So now Mock is involved. And so Mock goes to her ex-daughter-in-law and she asks her if she knows anyone who would be willing to kill Griesbauer. And the ex-daughter-in-law is like, no. So that failed. The next day, Mock happens to be over at Kay's farm delivering some dogs. And Kay starts telling her that Griesbauer threatened to murder her and that she's scared for her life. So now Mock feels like she really needs to save her friend. So what does she do? She goes and she asks her son if he knows any hitmen who would be willing to assassinate Griesbauer, or if he himself would be willing to do it. And I guess son doesn't really take her seriously and he just ignores her. So that fails as well. So Mock's not having any luck. Meanwhile, Kay is over here getting impatient. Like, this is all taking way too long. And pretty quickly she's frustrated and she's mad that they can't find anyone to do the job. So eventually, Kay just tells Mock that they're just gonna have to do this murder themselves. And one night, that's exactly what they do. Mock goes over to Kay's place, and they set their plan into motion. So it's late, and Kay goes to pick up her husband, Griesbauer, from work. And when they get home, Mock is there waiting. I guess she's just hanging out. And the two of them, they get Griesbauer to walk over to the barn with Kay to check on a litter of puppies. I guess Kay's like, we need to go check on the puppies. Once they're there, Kay suddenly pulls out a rifle, and blam, she shoots him. After that, she and Mock put the rifle near his body to make it look like he unalived himself. Then they go back to the house, and they call 911, and they pretend to be all surprised and freaked out. And pretty quickly, police arrive. And they question Kay and Mock, and Kay and Mock, they give them this whole bullshit story. They say that Griesbauer went out to the barn to check on the puppies, and then Kay says she suddenly heard a gunshot, and then she woke up Mock, who I guess was there sleeping. Then they both ran out to the barn and found Griesbauer there, and he had unalived himself. And so police start investigating, and they're searching the property, and they're looking over the whole scene, and immediately they find something suspicious about the rifle. Because the rifle is actually a lever-action rifle, and after you shoot it, you crank the lever to pull another round into the chamber. So they're looking at this gun, and there's a live round in the chamber, which means that Griesbauer would have had to have cranked the lever after he shot himself, which just isn't possible. So then, police look around the house and they find bank records showing that Kay was in a lot of debt. They also find insurance policies that were taken out on her husband. I guess Kay just left all this incriminating paperwork out in the open and police just found it. And so police are immediately very suspicious of these two. But they don't have any solid evidence to charge anyone with anything. So there's nothing they can do. Regardless, the next day, Kay and Mock are both starting to get really worried. They have a sinking feeling that the police are onto them. Mock is especially freaking out. So Kay comes up with a plan. She gives Mock a bag of pills, a bunch of hydrocodone and Vicodin, and she tells her to take them all. That way, she won't die, but she'll get really sick and need to be hospitalized, and police will end up sending her to a psychiatric facility instead of sending her to jail. And I guess Mock hears this weird plan and she's like, all right. So at some point she does what Kay told her to do, and she takes a bunch of these pills. After, I guess she gets spooked and she drives over to a friend's house and she tells her friend, like, help, I took a bunch of pills. And the friend calls an ambulance and Mock gets taken to a hospital. So police end up hearing about this unaliving attempt, and keep in mind that they're still investigating Griesbauer's death. So now they're even more suspicious of all this. Like, why is Mock suddenly trying to unalive herself? Is she guilty of something? So they start investigating her, and eventually they end up talking to her son. And her son tells them that, yeah, at one point his mom, Mock, asked him to assassinate someone. And so, bam, police arrest Mock. Here's her mugshot. And she ends up getting charged with first-degree murder. And that's great and all, but police can't arrest Kay because they still don't have any direct evidence to tie her to any murder. I mean, they can't prove that she shot anyone. So the investigation kind of just stalls. And 2 years go by, and police still aren't able to tie Kay to the crime. So they come up with a plan to get Mock to flip on her. And they end up reaching out to Mock's son. Not her son that we've already talked about, but her other son, who coincidentally is in prison for crimes unrelated to this story. So they reach out to him and they let her son out of prison temporarily. And they also let Mock out of jail temporarily, and they put them in a room together, and Mock's son talks to her, and he talks her into confessing to the police and ultimately flipping on Kay. And so Mock finally confesses to everything. And she says that Kay was actually the one who pulled the trigger and shot Griesbauer. And so, bam, police arrest Kay. Here's her mugshot. And so ultimately, Mock goes to trial, and she blames the whole murder on Kay, but she gets found guilty and she's sentenced to life in prison. While Kay also goes to trial and she blames the whole murder on Mock. And she also gets found guilty and she's also sentenced to life in prison.